Welcome to Handmade History.
Hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm Alicia.
And I'm Sonia.
And today we have another listener-suggested episode.
Monica sent us an email asking about tartan, so thank you, Monica.
Yes, thank you, Monica. And Monica wrote, tartan has a long history in Scotland, but is also so representative of Scotland in pop culture. And she has some great examples like Carnegie Mellon University's tartan, A New Witch's tartan, Brigadoon, and Outlander. She says, I wonder how tartan was originally made, what makes something specifically tartan as opposed to just plaid, and what the colors signify. And these are great questions, and we'll try to answer them throughout this episode. Sonia, want to kick us off?
Yeah, so what is tartan? According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, tartan is a cross-checkered repeating pattern or set of different colored bands, stripes, or lines of definite width and sequence woven into woolen cloth, sometimes with silk added. So the pattern for a tartan is called a set with two T's. They have great cultural significance and association with Scotland. Sally Tuckett, an historian, writes that tartans have been, quote, used as a symbol of history and rebellion. She says they are an iconic and seemingly unavoidable element of modern Scottish identity.
Yes. And according to the Scottish Register of Tartans Act of 2008, a tartan is a design which is capable of being woven consisting of two or more alternating colored stripes which combine vertically and horizontally to form a repeat checkered pattern. So what this means is tartans are typically woven in a 2/2 twill pattern. And a 2/2 twill pattern means that the vertical threads or the warp threads are in sets of two, and the horizontal or weft threads are woven in sets of two. So if you were to weave it like by hand, you would take two threads and go over, under, and then the next two threads you would go under, over. And we have a link in our show notes to a video that shows how this works on a simple cardboard loom, which I found really helpful. And anyone can design a tartan and register it to the Scottish Register of Tartans. It just has to follow the guidelines, which are on the register's website.
So let's break down the differences between tartan and plaid. Plaid means any pattern where there are stripes woven at right angles. Tartans have the same pattern of stripes horizontally and vertically, so there are squares in the finished fabric. So this means that all tartans are plaids, but not all plaids are tartans. So in the Venn diagram, tartans are completely within plaids. And confusingly, in Scotland, plaid is a word for a garment. That is a 5-meter long piece of fabric that is worn as a kilt, belted and draped over your arm.
Yes. And there is some mythology associated with Scottish tartans. So many people believe that there is a tartan for every clan in Scotland. We'll talk a bit more in a minute what a clan is. So if you have a Scottish last name, you can go look up your tartan on the Scottish Register of Tartans, and that tartan is your official clan tartan. And this is kind of my general understanding of tartans before I did this research. These clan tartans are considered ancient and official, and a clan chieftain has certified them as the clan tartan. And then there is a kind of counter myth about the myth, which is that these clan tartans are actually a Victorian invention, and that the idea of clans having their own tartan is kind of nostalgic or just patriotism. Had you heard of either of these myths, Sonia?
Yeah, the first one, like that every clan has a tartan.
Yes, I had heard that too. So we're going to share more about the history of tartans and clans and their manufacture in Scotland, and you can decide at the end what you think.
So we'll talk a little bit about Scotland, which is part of the United Kingdom, and it is the northernmost country in the UK, and it is part of the island of Great Britain. There is extreme weather and landscapes. The Highlands in the north are famous for their lochs, which are lakes, including Loch Ness, and the rocky landscapes, cliffs, mountains, and glens, which are valleys. The lowlands include the Midland Valley and the southern uplands. And Scotland has its own Scottish Parliament, which was elected in 1999 for the first time since 1707. And it has clans, which are family or kinship groups, and these may be of people who are related by blood or who perceive themselves to be kin.
People have been living in Scotland since at least 3000 BCE. Some of the groups of people who lived in Scotland include the Picts, the Scots, the Brits, and the Angles. The Picts were a notable group in that they had matrilineal rule. And Romans tried to take over Scotland in the 1st and 2nd centuries CE, but they failed. And instead, the Romans built Hadrian's Wall, which is very much associated with Scotland, but is in fact entirely in England. And the Romans left by the 400s. After that, Vikings came and they raided and ruled from the late 700s to the 1000s. And in 843, the first Scottish king emerged, Kenneth MacAlpin, or King Kenneth I. He was king of the Scots and the Picts and may have been the son of a Pictish queen. And over the next 400 years, Scotland became unified through lots of fighting and land disputes. One interesting aspect of the Scottish ruler or the Scottish ruling system is that it follows the Celtic system of tanistry. Tanistry means that the successor to a king can be any male relative within a family group of 4 generations. So this led to a lot of killing of predecessors by male relatives. For example, Duncan I was killed by Macbeth, his cousin, and Macbeth was killed by Malcolm Canmore, Duncan's son, and this gave us the plot of Shakespeare's play, Macbeth.
So by the 1100s, a system of clans emerged in Scotland. Clans were networks of families that were loyal to a chief. Clan comes from the Gaelic word clan, with 2 N's, that means children. And they are legally recognized groups today. They have an official clan chief who has an official seal of arms that represents the clan. And they are associated with the place where the clan once lived. Originally, clans were organized around a chief who had land ownership or authority. Chiefs of clans might expand their land and take over other people's land, and those people might join the clan and take the clan name. And clans were made up of people who were largely farmers.
So that is how sometimes people who consider themselves to be part of a clan could be blood relatives, or they could have been kind of absorbed back, a few hundred or 1,000 years ago into another clan.
Mm-hmm.
So getting back to tartans, the oldest tartan cloth is the Glen Affric tartan. This was a piece of cloth that was found in the village of Glen Affric, and it was preserved in a peat bog. And it has been carbon dated to sometime between 1500 and 1600, most likely. And researchers who studied it think it was an outdoor working garment. And there is an older fragment of cloth that is woven in a simple checkered pattern with undyed yarn, but that is not a true tartan. That one is called the Falkirk tartan, even though it's not a true tartan, and it dates to the 200s CE.
There is a painting by Michael Wright of Lord Montgomery depicting full Highland dress, and it is from 1683 and currently hangs in the National Galleries in Edinburgh. Lord Murray's outfit includes a belted plaid, which is that long piece of fabric we mentioned above, also draped over his arm, a cloak, and hose. And his tartan is a small cross-check pattern. The plaid is actually a very useful garment because it can be used as clothing and also as bedding. Lord Montgomery was the 5th son of the first Marquess of Atholl, a powerful Highland chieftain. And Lord Murray was part of a contingent of Scots who tried to form a settlement in Panama. But he was killed by the Spanish in Panama. So the portrait may have been painted when he was visiting Irish relatives at Kilkenny Castle in southeast Ireland.
So tartan cloth has been made in Scotland for a very long time. And much of the following comes from a really great article by Sally Tuckett in the Scottish Historical Review. And we're going to talk about the manufacture of tartans in Scotland from the 1700s onward. So William Wilson and Sons was one of the oldest, most successful tartan manufacturers in Scotland. They were started by William Wilson, who was born in 1727 in St. Ninian's Parish. He worked as a weaver, and he started buying and selling goods, including his own textiles, in 1759. He married Janet Patterson, the daughter of another weaver, and 3 of their sons, John, James, and Alexander, joined in the weaving trade. Their factory was in Bannockburn, which was a good place to trade with people in both the Highlands and the Lowlands. And they started off making all sorts of woven wool fabrics, including tartans, serge, shalloon, and camlet in the 1760s. They became the largest weavers in Bannockburn by 1787. They had 12 looms at that time, the most of any person or company. And they also contracted with other weavers in the village as they needed. But by the 1780s, they housed most of their employees in their own building. And they also had an extensive international trade network. They would buy raw wool, which they then spun. They bought yarn from England and the borderlands of Scotland, and they dyed wool with native and imported dyes. They also had a large face-to-face network in Scotland. And a quote, "The sons and grandsons of William Wilson traveled the country, informing customers of new products, collecting orders, dealing with complaints, and making general assessment of the economic climate." So they had excellent and extensive customer service and market research. And in the late 1760s, the wearing of tartans was actually banned through the Prescription Act after the Jacobite Uprising. Want to tell us about the Jacobite Uprising, Sonia?
Yeah, so if you watched Outlander, you know all about it. In 1715 and 1745, some Scots joined attempts to overthrow the Hanovers, who were the rulers of Britain at the time, and replace them with James Stuart, who had a claim to the throne but was living in exile. In 1746, King George II defeated the Jacobites in the Battle of Culloden. Many Scots died and they were treated horribly. Many were killed even as they retreated. And British rule was tightened as a result. So Britain took the land that belonged to clan leaders. And much of this land, which folks had farmed, became used for sheep because wool was a very profitable trade at this time. So clans were forced to leave and find new trades like fishing. At this time, many Scottish people left Scotland for America by choice or because they were forced to. And Britain also passed the Act of Prescription, which prohibited the playing of bagpipes, the speaking of Gaelic, and the wearing of tartans.
Yes. So the Prescription Act did not seem to hurt Wilson and Sons. A daybook from 1770 of the company shows that tartan was still the primary product in their business at this time. And there was actually a loophole in the Prescription Act, which was that men in the military could wear tartan. So Wilson and Sons clothed the Highland regiments, which were made up of Scottish men in British service. And kind of a fun detail, the company would even make different types of fabric for different ranking members of the regiment, with better quality for higher ranking officials and lesser quality for the rank and file. At this point, numbers were used more often than names for different tartans. And when names were used, they were often place names. However, there was a Janet Wilson tartan, which might have been named after William Wilson's wife or daughter-in-law. And this is one of the earliest tartans associated with a family or clan name.
By 1780, Wilson and Sons was trading as far as Grenada and Jamaica, where they traded tartan with the Christies, which was probably a Scottish family, for rum and sugar. And business just expanded more. So in the 1820s, Wilson and Sons had customers in England, Ireland, other parts of Europe, North and South America, and the West Indies. And they also expanded to include more machinery. So in 1820, Wilson had 132 looms, as well as other machines and a dye house. In 1822, they built the Royal George Mill, which included spinning machines and looms. And there was an increased demand all over the world for Scottish tartans.
Yes. The association of clan names to tartans became popular when groups like the Highland Society of London were formed. In 1850, the Highland Society created a list of clan tartans, and most of these were designed by the Wilsons. Other societies formed around Scotland and in other places, and they would ask the Wilsons for advice on what their clan tartan would be. This was a consumer-led trend to have a clan create or adopt its official tartan during this time period. For example, the McPherson tartan was originally number 43, or Kid, tartan created by Wilson and Sons. It was acknowledged by Duncan McPherson of Cluny as the official clan tartan in 1817. There was actually a McPherson of Cluny tartan made at Wilson, but it was very similar to the Macintosh tartan. So Duncan McPherson or other McPhersons chose this one to be the clan tartan. And at the same time, commemorative tartans were made for events or for people and just designed at Wilson. So, for example, there was a Waterloo tartan that commemorated the battle at Waterloo. So to go back to the myth we mentioned above, it does seem to be a myth that the clan tartans go all the way back to the clan's earliest origins in the 1100s. But I don't think that at this time people were necessarily claiming it. It seemed like it was more a way to solidify a clan's identity and have a fun symbol that was connected to Scottish identity in general. What do you think, Sonia?
Yeah, it seemed like both were kind of true. Like there is obviously a long history of tartan as like something that like like Scottish people related to in history, and like obviously it was a symbol for many reasons. Like the British tried to like stop the use of it, but also it was
Yeah.
like a rediscovery almost by like a reconnection to it, like you're saying. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Kind of like a revival and an evolution, like so many other crafts we've talked about.
Yeah.
So, even if it wasn't necessarily true that the specific clan tartans had like a ancient heritage, it is true that Victorians absolutely loved tartans and romanticized them. And a lot of this was thanks to popular historical novels about Scotland written by Sir Walter Scott.
There was also a more general Victorian fascination with anything seen as exotic, and Scotland was both exotic and close by. So tartan was used not just in kilts, but in cloaks, coats, shawls, dresses, and handkerchiefs. And by 1822, King George IV was going to visit Edinburgh, and Sir Walter Scott encouraged everyone in his home country to dress in, quote, the complete national costume. And what ensued was a tartan mania before, during, and after his visit. So Wilson and Sons ramped up their orders of wool from England from £600 a month to £600 a week in the months leading up to Charles's visit. A George IV tartan was designed, and people ordered it in the months after his visit. And tartan remained incredibly popular.
Yes, and many years later, eventually Wilson and Sons closed down, and the Royal George Mill became a designated historical place in 1974, and it's currently used as a Masonic hall. The creation of tartans has continued to this day. People still design them to commemorate events, people, and even businesses. In the email from Monica, she mentioned the Witches of Scotland tartan. So I thought I would read the description of that from the Register of Tartans because it's a good example of how the creation of a tartan can symbolize and be connected to a cause or an event. In this case, it's a cause. So, in the Register of Tartans, they write, "This design was created to memorialize those who suffered as a result of the Witchcraft Act from 1563 to 1736 in Scotland. This tartan will be woven to make products to help create a living memorial. The black and gray colors are intended to represent both the dark times of this period and the ashes of those burned. It also incorporates red and pink colors, symbolic of the legal tapes used to bind papers, both during that time and now. The thread count of this design incorporates the years 1563 and 1736, represented as single entries. 1 plus 5 plus 6 plus 3 equals 15, and 1 plus 7 plus 3 plus 6 equals 17. These are shown in black and gray surrounding a white check of 3 threads. These threads represent the core objectives of the organization, which are to ensure a pardon, an apology, and memorials are achieved. The large black section of 173 threads is intended to represent the 173 years of darkness, and red and pink sections are repeated 3 times for the 3 prime objectives of the Witches of Scotland organization." And it was designed by Claire Campbell. But isn't that interesting, Sonia, how like all the symbols can represent all these different things?
Yeah, I mean, I knew that or like what I'd heard is that each clan had their own like
Mhm.
design, but clearly there's so much thought that goes into it, which is really interesting. And I hadn't heard about the witch's tartan, so
Yeah. Yeah, I found it after Monica mentioned it.
mhm.
And I think the colors here are symbolic for the reasons that the designer wrote, but I think that the colors can change and represent whatever the designer wants. So there's no like green equals,
Yeah,
I don't
it reminds me of
nature.
our pride flag episode.
Oh yeah.
I feel like right the symbolism and kind of it's like
Yeah.
an enduring symbol, and then we see that with Scottish tartans as well.
Very cool. Great connection. I then also found some other fun tartans. Would you like to hear about them?
Yeah.
Okay, so there is a Hello Kitty tartan.
Ooh.
And in fact, there are 5 Hello Kitty tartans. There's Hello Kitty, which features pink, Hello Kitty dress, Hello Kitty black, Hello Kitty red, and Hello Kitty navy. And then I also found out that there is a lunar tartan, and that Neil Armstrong left a piece of the lunar tartan on the moon along with the Armstrong tartan. And the lunar tartan is a brown and gray tartan that was obviously woven in honor of the lunar landing.
Wow.
Pretty fun. So, Sonia, what do you think about tartans?
I love it. I'm excited to go dig into the register of tartans.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was so cool. I with all these like fabric episodes, you never realize how much there is to it, I feel like. So
there's fun stories with all of them.
Yeah.
So if you have a family tartan, a clan tartan, or a tartan that you made, we would love to see it. You can send it to us. You can email us at handmadehistoryhosts, that's HOSTS @gmail.com, or visit our website at handmadehistorypodcast.com. One last thing before we go. We have a special discount code for you from Folkwear Patterns. Folkwear Patterns provides patterns based on authentic vintage and folk garments from around the world. And they just launched a new pattern that is really relevant to our discussion here today, pattern number 154, Child Scottish Kilt and Jacket. This pattern includes detailed instructions for pleating a kilt, as well as a pattern for a Prince Charlie jacket, which is a traditional jacket named after James Stewart's son, Bonnie Prince Charlie. This pattern is newly available as a PDF, and it includes layers for size in both copy shop and print-at-home files, as well as projector files, and you can also get it as a paper pattern. Handmade History listeners can use the code TARTAN, that's TARTAN, to get 25% off 154 Child Scottish Kilt and Jacket, or number 152 Scottish Kilts, which are for adults, in either PDF or paper formats. The adult pattern includes instructions for the kilt along with the jacket and a vest that goes with the jacket. And Folkwear has a great blog post about pleating the kilt, and it looks complicated but really interesting, and it would really showcase a gorgeous tartan. So again, you can use code TARTAN, TARTAN, to get 25% off either of Folkwear's kilt patterns at folkwear.com. Thank you very much, Folkwear. Thanks so much for listening.
Bye.
Cut all this part out, blah, 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 blah. Okay.